Hey everybody, my name is Ethen Ostroff. I am a personal injury lawyer in the Philadelphia area. I represent people in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, but also can make sure that you find the best representation no matter what state you're in. Today we're going to talk about what falls under personal injury. But before we get to that, make sure to click that subscribe button, follow us along on that journey, and God forbid you are going through something, you are hurt, and it was preventable. Make sure to click that free consultation link below. You'll hop on the phone with either myself or any of the lawyers on my team at Ostroff Law. We are available 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week to make sure that you are available, or that we are available to answer your questions. And you'll speak directly to an attorney to talk about your situation. Make sure your questions are answered. So, what falls under personal injury? It's a great question. Think about personal injury as sort of an overall umbrella. Personal injury, in the most basic sense, means you were hurt, but you were likely not at fault. A personal injury lawsuit, as opposed to a criminal lawsuit, there are really two types of courts that deal with these kinds of situations. A intentional tort, or an intentional act, like, for example, assault, battery. Let's say that you were at a bar and you got punched in the face. That person intended to do that action. Therefore, criminal court will deal with that situation. Whereas civil court will deal with a situation of negligence and of punitive situations, such as somebody doing something knowing it could lead to harm. Like, for example, let's say that somebody who was the CEO of a nuclear power plant at the top of the Mississippi River. And they, let's say, were warned a week before a meltdown, hey, there's a good chance of a meltdown. If you spend an extra $1 million to prevent this meltdown, it will definitely save the day. And that meltdown happens because they said, screw it, I'm going to save the money. That person might have both negligence and punitive damages. And that all can be dealt with under civil court. Civil court is where personal injury cases are brought in front of a jury. Just like I'm sure you've seen in the movies, a judge, a jury, group members from the community, they will hear your set of facts. So what falls under personal injury really is any situation where someone was hurt and may not be at fault. And it would be up to the jury to determine who is at fault, and if someone's at fault, how much should they pay. So let's take a slip and fall situation. Let's say that you go to a 7-Eleven, you're walking through the aisles, you step on a grape, you slip, land on your butt, you break your tailbone, you break some ribs, you break your arm, and you're pretty banged up. And the question will come down to, did that location, that business, take reasonable care, or was it their fault why you fell? Maybe they didn't have a policy that said go check the aisles once every hour for an issue. Maybe they didn't have the right cameras. Maybe they didn't have the right staff. The goal of a personal injury case, and what falls under a personal injury case, is determining if you were at hurt and how much is it worth and who's at fault. So let's take that grape situation. We took that case to trial. The jury would have to answer two questions in that case. Question one, liability. How much or who is at fault? Let's say they say that the 7-Eleven is 90% at fault, but you're 10% at fault. In some states, you can't recover for that case. In others, like Pennsylvania, the second question, which is damages, how much is it worth, is reduced by how much you're at fault. So in this situation, you would only recover 90% of whatever they were going to give you. So let's say that the jury awarded you, they said, you know what, 7-Eleven is 90% at fault, John Doe is 10% at fault, and those injuries are worth $1 million. In Pennsylvania, the way it would work is that you would recover $900,000 because you were 10% at fault. So your settlement verdict number is reduced by the amount you're at fault. So what falls under personal injury? Any situation where you got hurt in a preventable situation and you were not at fault is worth a consultation. In personal injury, the way that the contracts are structured is very different from, say, for example, landlord-tenant or contract issues or, say, a business dispute. Those lawyers get paid by the hour. But in personal injury, there are specific rules to make sure that you don't get stuck with bills on the front end. You deal with those on the back end. You sign a contract called a contingency fee with your personal injury lawyer. What that means is that they only get paid if you do. In fact, it is a huge red flag if a lawyer tries to charge you something in addition to the contingency fee. You're already paying them enough. So what falls under personal injury? Any situation where you were hurt and may not be at fault is worth a free consultation with a lawyer because they only get paid if you do. So that first call, the second call, the 10th call, they're all free until you get paid. Let's say that you hire a lawyer and you're unhappy with their services. And let's say that the incident happened today, and a year later, after working with a lawyer for close to a year, you're just unhappy with the work they're doing. They're not picking up the phone. They're not getting back to you. The good news is in personal injury, make sure you read that fine print on the contract you signed. But a question you should ask your personal injury lawyer before you hire them: do I owe you anything if I fire you? It's a totally reasonable question because the answer should be no. You owe me nothing if you fire me. Make sure to get that in writing over an email. I owe you nothing if I fire you. Make sure that you have it clearly laid out in your contract you signed with them. And if it's not, ask for them to put something in there because it's totally reasonable to say, if you do a shitty job for me, I'm not going to pay you. I'm going to hire another lawyer. So what falls under personal injury really comes down to making sure that if you were hurt and not at fault, getting your questions answered on the front end. Because if you wait, let's say that you get in a car accident where you're dealing with some whiplash symptoms and you wait maybe 2 weeks to go to the doctor. Then you wait another 2 weeks to hire a lawyer. Let's say that it was a hit and run situation where, it might be a little difficult to find the other driver. By the time that you call that lawyer 4 weeks later, that injury case may not be worth anything because they can't find the defendant and because they didn't get the opportunity to set your case up. So, because any situation where you're hurt and not at fault falls under personal injury, there is no harm in getting a free consultation. That will just get your peace of mind of knowing you checked every box, you made sure that you asked every question that you needed to. And if you get told you don't have a case, you don't owe that lawyer a thing for that review. So if you are thinking about doing something when you got hurt and it wasn't your fault, there's really a couple things I typically tell clients. Number one, you're going to make sure that situation doesn't happen to someone else. If that driver that struck you because they were texting and driving needs to testify on the stand about being a distracted driver, guess what? You might have saved a life because they might have killed somebody else on the road. If you testify, if you bring a case against your, let's say that it's a, medical malpractice situation. Obviously, I respect and appreciate what our healthcare has done for our country, especially through times of COVID. But if you don't at least start the process of bringing a case against that doctor that botched your surgery, they're going to do it again because now they know they got away with it. It is the right thing to put people ahead of profits, and that's what personal injury lawyers do. And if you let insurance companies bully you into not doing something about it, insurance companies get out a discount, and the people that put you at harm will put others at harm. So, just to recap, what falls under personal injury: getting hurt, not being at fault. If you have any questions about your situation, I really hope you're not going through something. But if you are, there's a free consultation link below. And make sure to click that subscribe button and follow along. If you have any questions, I will personally hop on the phone with you and explain what your rights are, answer your questions, and make sure you feel in the loop. Thanks so much.